Okay, we're live now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jane. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, and all those good people out there who are watching the YouTube live stream. Before we proceed into the council meeting itself, can we have a respectful 1 minute silence in remembrance of the former Mayor of Pendle, Councillor Ian Gillespie, and perhaps at the same time reflect on the fact that this COVID crisis has cost the lives of 141 Pendle residents at 4 p.m. this evening.
It's Councillor Mrs. Shaw, Pendle Borough Council.
Is now joining.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Welcome again to this December meeting of the full council of Pendle Borough Council. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, apologies from Councillor Carlo Leonti.
Thank you. Councillor Witt? Councillor Iqbal?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't have any apologies. With your permission, can I just say a few words about former Councillor Ian Gillespie?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I served on the council when Ian was mayor, and you know, to say that he was a bag of laughs would be an understatement. I mean, he was able to diffuse any tension in any meeting that he chaired during his term as mayor, and he chaired that particular year very well. But I had the opportunity of working with Ian on a number of issues, Mr. Mayor, and to say that even though we were of different political persuasions, Ian was somebody who I respected in terms of his commitment to the people of Pendle, and certainly to those people that he represented on the council. And I think on behalf of the council, we send all our condolences to Ian family. He's sadly missed.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Sorry.
Sorry,
Councillor
Mayor,
Lord.
can I just say something? Yeah, thank you. I've been corresponding with Ian's daughter Hazel for the last couple of weeks, well, up to the funeral anyway, and I know that she's taken great comfort in for what the council have done, and in particular to Mr. Mosedale, who arranged for the flying of the flags on both town halls at half-mast. So I think on her behalf, I can say thank you. She has been very comforted by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Can we move on then to item 2 on the agenda?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I had my hand up.
Declaration of interest. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, sorry, apologies for interrupting. Apologies from Councillor Musaba Arshad, Neil McGowan, and Councillor Nathan McCulloch.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add my condolences with regard to Ian Gillespie, and as Councillor Iqbal said, he did have a wry wit, did Ian, and he approached things with a laugh in his eye, and it's tragic that he and so many other people have lost their lives through COVID-19. As you pointed out, far too many people here in Pendle, and that is so sad, and we must continue to do all that we can to combat the disease.
Thank you. Can we then move on to declaration of interest? Are there any declarations of interest? And members are reminded of the legal requirement concerning the declaration of interest. A member must declare a disclosable pecuniary interest which he or she has in any item on the agenda. And a member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in any item may not participate in any discussion of the matter at the meeting and may not participate in any vote taken on the matter at the meeting. I can hardly ask you to leave your own living rooms, the second part of that. No declarations of interest from anyone. I assume that unless somebody deliberately asked to speak here, that we take it that everyone has agreed. Thank you. Move on to item 3 then, minutes of council to approve as a correct record, or otherwise the minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th of September.
Second those.
You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Does anyone have any objection to those minutes being accepted? No? Thank you very much. We'll accept those minutes. Councillor Lord, can you take your hand down, please? And again, as Jane, can I remind everyone to keep their microphone muted unless they are imminently about to address the meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
So item 4, announcements from the Mayor and Leader of the Council. I have 2 very short announcements, really. I'd like to offer my personal congratulations to Councillor Mohammed Iqbal, Leader of the Council, on his appointment as an MBE, and similarly to Amanda Melton, the Principal of Nelson and Colne College, on her receipt of a CBE. And secondly, I can announce to Council that the High Sheriff of Lancashire's COVID-19 awards, we received 2 here in the borough. One to a group known as the Colne Musketeers, headed by one Councillor Dorothy Lord and friends, who during the early stages of the pandemic stepped in and produced thousands of face masks for distribution to care homes and emergency services when they were not available to procure on the open market. And secondly, quite sure that a number of people will be proud to know that Pendle's Support Hub also received a High Sheriff's COVID-19 award for its magnificent effort in stepping in and filling the gap that was required in the administration of the early stages of support for Pendle residents during the pandemic start. So congratulations to both those organisations from me. Leader, Councillor Iqbal, do you wish to continue with any announcement?
I do. First of all, thank you for your congratulations, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to thank all members of the council across the council for, and I think this is a reflection not only upon myself but all councillors of this council who work damn hard for their communities, and certainly it's a recognition of the community across Pendle who make sure that we work hard every single day. So thank you for those kind of comments, Mr. Mayor. I mean, in terms of a quick announcement from me, I know we've got a couple of motions on COVID later on, but I was in a meeting earlier today with the Housing Minister around the COVID review, which is on the 16th of December. And that was preceded by a meeting of Lancashire leaders to discuss whether we support Tier 3, Tier 2, or if somebody miracle we're going to Tier 1. I can report back to Council, Mr. Mayor, that I, along with the leader of Burnley Council, disagreed with our fellow Lancashire leaders where they wanted to create a split in Lancashire and put the east of the county into Tier 3 and the rest of them being put into Tier 2. I disagree with that on behalf of the borough, because I've also written to the Member of Parliament earlier this evening asking him to support me and the council in terms of our drive to government to put the whole of Lancashire into Tier 2. I mean, I will talk later on in terms of the impact on people's lives and also the economy across Pendle. But we've been in restrictions now, Mr. Mayor, for 9 months almost, of one shape or form. And I don't think it's a fair reflection on the people of Pendle to keep us in Tier 3. So hence the reason that I, along with my colleague from Burnley, have broken ranks today with fellow Lancashire leaders and said, look, we either all go into Tier 2, or if the government want to keep us and punish us in Tier 3, then so be it. Because the community of Pendle have done a fantastic effort over the last 8 months, 9 months, Mr. Mayor. And I don't think it's fair that even though the Prime Minister says that COVID is going on holiday for 5 days later on this month, that Pendle residents and Pendle businesses should continue to suffer. So I've written to the MP, as I've said, hoping for his support and his lobbying to government. But I'll speak later on in terms of the debates. Apart from that, Mr. Mayor, no other announcements from me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Iqbal. Moving then on to item 5 on the agenda. I'm not aware that we have any questions on notice from the public to the leader, and I'm getting a confirmatory nod from Philip Moosdow. So we will then move on to 6 questions on notice by members of the leader, members to the leader, a committee chairman or a representative on an outside body on matters not otherwise on the agenda. And again, I'm not aware that there are any such questions. Can we then move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is a report by the leader on the work of the Policy and Resources Committee, which you already have a copy of the report pre-circulated. Councillor Iqbal.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the report's there. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from colleagues. I think Councillor Greaves has his hand up.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Iqbal, in terms of the final item on page 5, which makes reference to enforcement, am I right in understanding that this is in relation to the saga concerning the land at Vernon Street in Nelson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that to be the case, Councillor Ali, and the Policy Committee resolved to talk to the Town Council about their future aspirations for that particular site, and Philip Mosdale will be arranging a meeting with the Town Council to discuss that formally.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. And through you, Mr. Mayor, one more question.
Just before you go on to a second question, Councillor Ali, For your reference, Philip Moosdale was nodding in agreement to the statement from Councillor Iqbal there, so he does have it in hand.
Much obliged.
Okay, continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second question, well, for purposes of clarity, is on the tree planting exercise. First of all, I'd like to congratulate and commend the committee in taking the initiative on tree planting. Much needed, obviously, with the current climate-related issues. Councillor Iqbal, can I also maybe request a further discussion around the involvement of Nelson Town Council insofar as land concerning Nelson goes for this particular initiative? Is there scope or room for involvement of the Town Council, Councillor Iqbal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely happy to. The committee and the administration is more than happy to talk to anybody or any organisation or any town and parish council about additional tree planting across the borough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. I don't see anybody else with their hands up, so I take it
Mr.
there are
Mayor,
no further
Mr. Mayor, I
questions.
think there is.
Well, I have, Chair.
Mr. Mayor, I have my hand up. I think it's Councillor Greaves and then Councillor Tom Witt, Mr. Mayor. You've muted yourself again, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Greaves, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The system seems inferior to everybody being in the council chamber, and let's hope we can get back in the council chamber as soon as possible in 2021 instead of having to take part in this farce. However, Mr. Mayor, I want to ask a question and make a comment on the first page, national planning reforms. Not only have we now had the white paper and the proposals which one assumes are going to come to legislation, we've had a number of statutory instruments jumping the gun on pre-planning. What do I mean? Getting pre-planning consent, but you don't have to apply for proper planning permission. You don't have to go through some of the motions of that. We now have a further proposal from the government to weaken the planning system even further, to speed up some of the proposals, such as proposals for new hospitals, which I don't imagine we're going to get in Pendle, but nevertheless there may be some, and for weakening yet again the number of things that people have to get proper planning advice for. And as I've read them, it seems to be that any properties which are not residential properties will be able to be converted into residential properties without any further planning applications to be made. At the moment, you can do it to shops in town centres if they are freestanding, but you can't do it if they're in terraces. That appears to be changing again. And so we're getting this whole series of proposals, which is eventually going to culminate in a bill, which is actually dismantling the planning system of this country. What the Conservatives are doing is an utter and absolute disgrace. And what we can do as Pendle Council to put our little tuppence in to say it's an absolute disgrace, then I think is the better. What I'd like to ask is the report on the Policy Resources Committee says that the P&R requested Andrew Stevenson MP to lobby government and to highlight the need to exceptions for errors, etc., etc. What I'd like to ask is, has there been a response from the Member of Parliament for Pendle? Does he agree to what Pendle Council's views are on the dismantling of the planning system, taking away almost all rights of people to put their point of view forward or to put in objections, and indeed rights of councillors to stop inappropriate development. What does he think about this? Has he told us? And if not, can you write again? And can the council write again and find out what he actually thinks? The second thing I just wanted to report on the next item, tree planting on council-owned land, from the meetings of the Climate Emergency Working Party, which has taken this in hand. It has been very difficult this winter to do everything we wanted to do for all the obvious reasons that everybody knows about. However, it is hoped that the target of, I think it's 3,000 trees to be planted this winter will be achieved. But in the case of most of these sites and any other sites that come forward, either from members or from parish councils or from private individuals, we'll really now be looking for a major boost in the following winter, which will be the winter of 21-22. But it is progressing as best we can in this very difficult year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Iqbal, do you wish to respond to that, please?
I can do, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you very much to Councillor Greaves for his question. I mean, like him, I think most members of this council agree that the planning system being sneaked in by the government in this current pandemic is basically through the back door, and is really, as he says, and I agree with him, that is dismantling the issue around planning, because one of the biggest reasons why a lot of us serve on the council is around planning issues, and what the government has proposed was something that the policy committee disagrees with, and we've written back to government to that extent. In terms of the local member of parliament, I did write on the council, on the committee's behalf, seeking his support, and Councillor Greaves will be surprised to hear that I haven't had a response yet. So I will write again on behalf of the council, asking the member of parliament if he could spare a few minutes of his precious time and write back to me on that and other issues I've written to him about. But in direct answer to Councillor Greaves' question, I've not had an answer.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was glad to hear a colleague from across the board talking about the involvement of parish and town councils in the tree planting initiatives. That's something I've been saying all along, and I think I did at the last full council meeting. I would like to report then that Barnoldswick Town Council did manage to plant 450 trees at one of its major parks. And I would also like to thank the Pendle Council staff who helped in that initiative. They were very supportive, and I'm hopeful to see more works like that across Pendle, and hopefully you as leader would facilitate that happening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Councillor Iqbal, do you wish at all to respond to that?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Can I first of all thank Councillor Tom Whip for his question, also thank him for his efforts in terms of the tree planting that he's mentioned, and his powers of coercion in terms of getting those volunteers in Barnoldswick to help him with that effort. But he can be rest assured that this administration will continue to work for all the residents of Pendle, and in terms of tree planting, we will look to work, as I've said to Councillor Ali earlier, across the borough, but commend any councillors that have been doing the work to date.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Ahmed.
Just like to ask a question about the tackling contamination in the recycling bins. Just want to know where we're up to with that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Iqbal, do you wish to respond to that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, as the report says, is that's work in progress. The officers are working on that particular proposal. We'll bring a report back to the policy committee, but as I'm sure Councillor Ahmed will be aware, our officers have been working additional hours dealing with the pandemic, and if things are starting to, where they normally are on the ball and are taking an extra month, and I'm quite comfortable with that. But you can be rest assured that officers have got this work in progress, and a report will come to the appropriate policy committee.
I don't see anyone else with their hand up. So therefore, can we move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Treasury Management Strategy statement, which had been circulated to all members. Fairly weighty document. Do you wish to take? Yeah, okay.
Muted yourself again, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Iqbal, do you wish to introduce this document?
I was going to ask Councillor Whip to do it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, my financial wizardry does not rival that of the authors of this report. I am very happy to move it. It's a very important document. I don't think really that the full council should be tinkering with it too much. You will see that there is a recommendation that changes our current policies. I think suffice to say that those of us on policy and resources and indeed outside meetings do scrutinise the movement of these millions very carefully. And as a council, I think that we have robust policies in place to make sure that the council are good custodians of the council taxpayers' funds. And I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Do we have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So the proposal is that we note the report and that we accept the recommendations contained therein.
Chairman, I've got my hand up, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Ahmed?
Yeah, just like to ask the question in terms of the borrowing amounts of the council at this moment in time and the limits. Are we comfortable with where we are in terms of the borrowing? Is that proposed to stay as it is, or are we considering borrowing more money to finance the council services? So I don't know if Dean or somebody would like to answer that question, please.
Dean, would you like to make a comment, please?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. If I recall correctly, our borrowing is currently £23.6 million. What we're proposing in the strategy is that we don't increase that borrowing in this financial year, where we previously indicated that we would do. And the reasons for that is we have surplus cash at the moment. Equally, the cost of borrowing is greater than the cost of the return that we can get from investing borrowed funds. So it makes sense for the council not to borrow funds, but to use its own internal resources to fund its capital programme. We will be reviewing the strategy again as part of next year's budget process, and we will bring in a revised strategy, which will probably say the same thing that you're seeing this evening. So I wouldn't anticipate it would change. Just for noting, we don't use borrowing to fund day-to-day service delivery. It's for capital investment.
Thank you, Dean. Councillor Ahmed, are you satisfied with that response?
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the proposal on the table then is to note the report and to accept the recommendations. Are there any people who in fact dissent from that? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, nobody is jumping in to put their hand up, so accept the fact that that report is noted and the recommendations accepted. Moving on to item 9, which is budget proposals, and I remind councillors that since it is a budget item, there must be a recorded vote. So there will be a recorded vote in whatever we decide on this. So therefore, moving on then to that particular item, Councillor Rickbar.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. What I'm proposing is that unless anybody objects, that we take both of those items together, item 9A and 9B, and that will help in terms of the voting process.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Is there anybody seriously objecting to that proposal, that we deal with both items together in terms of the vote? No, nobody's indicating that they're really dissenting, but I do have hands up from Councillor Whip and from Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Whip, please.
Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I am seconding the proposal that we accept both of these issues. Just a reminder that despite promises that we've had from government about no council in tier 3 areas being out of pocket and in financial difficulties as a consequence of COVID-19 and the restrictions and the situation that we're in, Pendle Council does have a significant shortfall in funding, and that the expectation is that we have to make savings in several millions of pounds. You know, whatever the government say, they never seem to come up with the cash. So these are very small steps towards filling that financial gap, and we all hope, I think, that we can avoid significant cuts to services, but we've got to bear in mind that COVID-19 is costing us dear, not only in terms of people's lives and people's livelihoods, but also in terms of the finances of this authority. And, you know, if the government provides sufficient finance to ensure that we can stay on an even keel, that's great. But if they don't, it's up to each and every one of us as councillors to set a balanced budget. And, you know, the time will come when our Section 1401 officer will be, Section 151 officer will be serving a Section 114 notice, mixing up my numbers. And, you know, we really have to be very careful. So I second the proposal and hope that we can avoid any significant impact on services as we go through the rest of the budget process.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. So we have it proposed and seconded. Councillor Ahmed, you have your hand up. You wish to speak, please? Nadeem, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry. Yes, in terms of the proposals, I did have some concerns about the environmental services manager and the impact that may be having on service delivery. I've managed to get some further information on this, so I'm now in a position I'm happy with accepting that the cuts and the proposals before us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ahmed. In which case, it appears that all three parties are in agreement. Can we move to the recorded vote then, and I'll hand the proceedings over to Dean, who will work through the list of names and ask for your response. Thank you.
Unmute.
Okay, Dean, up to you.
You put it on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not on the...
It's not having it.
Are you 2 metres away from the mayor, Dean?
Ken, you might have to turn off your output sound as well.
Right, councillors, when I shout off your name, please can you say you're for the motion or you are against the motion? Councillor Adam.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Ahmed.
For.
Ali.
For.
Amma. Councillor Amma. Councillor Amma. Councillor Ansar.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
For.
Councillor Musawa Arshad. He's not here. Councillor Ashraf.
For.
Councillor Aslan.
For.
Councillor Carroll.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Clegg.
For.
Coburn Price.
For.
Cooney.
For.
Crossley.
For.
Fletcher.
For.
Foxley M.
For.
Foxley P.
For.
Goulthorpe.
For.
Greaves.
For.
Hanif.
For.
Hartley.
For.
Henderson. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson. Iqbal M.
For.
Iqbal Y.
For.
Lord.
For.
McAvoy.
For.
McGowan.
For.
Mahmood. Mahmood. He's not here, is he? He's late, isn't he? Yeah. Mann.
For.
Mills.
For.
Newman. Councillor Newman. Councillor Newman. Nixon.
For.
Purcell.
For.
Sirkeeb. Councillor Sirkeeb.
You shut that window down a minute.
Councillor Sirkeeb. Shaw. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw. Tennant.
For.
Turner.
For.
War.
For.
Whip D.
For.
Whip T.
For.
Wicks.
For.
Thank you very much, councillors. The result of that vote was votes for acceptance of the report 36, those against 0, and there were no abstentions. Thank you very much indeed. Can we then move on to item 10 on the agenda, the proposed amendments to the Constitution? Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. There are 4 recommendations on this. The Governance Working Group met a few weeks ago and suggested that these come to they had to come to the council anyway for a decision. Obviously, the area committee structure was going to be based on the all-out elections this last May that have not happened. Whenever the council has the all-out elections, the proposal is that we go to 4 area committees. The amendment to the calling procedure on planning applications is set out. The Council Code of Conduct is also updated, and then item 4, or recommendation 4, the Mayor, is relating to budget council meeting. And a number of councillors over a number of years have always said that we get to the budget meeting in February, and between all political groups, we're arguing over a few pennies between us. And what this change in the Constitution means, and I think it provides some assurance to the people of Pendle, is that all political parties, whether they agree a budget or not beforehand, have to show their hand before the budget meeting. And whoever's then at that budget meeting is clear, Mr. Mayor, what the proposal is from each political party. Clearly, there is some discretion to whoever is chairing that meeting to allow some sensible amendments. But what we can't have is what happens year after year, and we're all guilty of it, is that we try and just sneak in the odd thing, simply trying to make some cheap political points. And my group is as guilty as any other, and I think this proposal in the Constitution will put a stop to that and make sure that the council moves forward on a sensible basis in terms of budget. So I move in all 4 recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Do we have a seconder for that proposal, please?
Yeah, happy second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Crossley with her hand in the air.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the motion that there should be 4 area committees. I do appreciate the fears that Pendleside and Barrowford will be a very small committee, but hopefully it will, as now, include representatives from the 7 smallest rural communities in Pendle, namely the Pendleside villages. These representatives use the current area committee as an opportunity to voice their concerns about matters that affect their communities. I doubt whether their voices would be heard if they were part of a larger urban area committee. I understand that these area committees came about in order to give local communities direct contact with decision makings. Reducing the numbers will make this contact even more remote. So therefore I will be supporting the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to propose an amendment, and the amendment is that we delete the amendment to the call-in procedure. Mr. Mayor, we have argued very strongly for the area currently Barrowford and Western parishes to be retain an area committee rather than being subsumed within an adjacent one of several area committees that might be possible. So we fully support the 4 area committee structure as set out in the report. Similarly, the rules of procedure relating to the budget and the revised updated councillor code of conduct. The issue that we have with the call-in procedure is that there have now been 2 occasions when, because of the way that a planning application has been dealt with, certainly members of my group and other groups as well have been minded to call in the decisions because, frankly, they are perverse. And the most recent occasion, my understanding is that there is an outstanding calling that has been requested in relation to a decision at the last Policy Resources Committee, where a vote was tied on an extension which was outside policy and which would set a precedent that would apply across the borough if it were approved, because of one of the, as it happens, Conservative councillors not voting at the meeting, although nominally being present. The vote was tied and the matter was approved in the meeting on the chairman's casting vote. Now, clearly under those circumstances, and I can't prejudge what the absent member the way in which that absent member might have voted, but it could well have been that the vote would have been against it. I raise this issue here because I don't believe we ought to be changing the rules to exclude such circumstances from the calling process. I think it's entirely reasonable for planning applications not to be called in, and there are only these 2 occasions, and in both cases it's involved the use of casting votes, it's involved the use of tactics which have overturned the policy of this authority to the detriment of the residents of this area. So I don't think we should be ruling out call-ins during such circumstances. So my amendment is to strike out the second part of this resolution, which is, and I would delete the amendment to the call-in procedure, and I so move.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Witt. Do you have a seconder for that amendment?
Mr. Mayor, I am happy to second that. I think it's vitally important that we do have a calling procedure for such matters, and I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Whip. Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tom Witt. Councillor Ahmed, on the amendment.
Thank you. No, I just want to speak on a few of the items.
Okay, can we restrict this at this point in time? I'll come back to you on the substantive motion.
I'll speak on the amendment then, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yes. My view is we've had a long discussion within our group, and it is an important issue for the council. But my personal view on this matter is a planning application comes before the area committee, it's voted on, and if it's against a major breach of council policy, it goes to the Policy and Resources Committee for reconsideration. just like he used to go to the Development Management Committee. Under the Development Management Committee, there was no system or no further procedure of a call-in on planning matters. Not to my knowledge has that ever happened. So my argument is, where does it end? You've had one meeting to decide on a planning application at the area committee. It then goes to the Policy and Resources Committee for a second bite, and rightly or wrongly, whatever the decision is, I think the decision should stand. And that should be the conclusion of the matter, because otherwise you've got applicants, they've put an application and it's just dragging on, making a decision being sent out to the applicant. And I think that is unfair. The decision should be made there and then, and the vote of the Policy and Resources Committee should be final.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Nixon, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be supporting Councillor David Whipp's amendment on this particular item. I was at the said Policy and Resources Committee meeting. It was regrettable that my colleague, his connection to the internet was lost and he couldn't vote on the matter. I think that we should be able to call in planning applications which are clearly against policy and, as Councillor Whip has put it, perverse. There's a sentence in the report at the top of page 3. It states, apart from the quasi-judicial considerations, it is suggested that there are real dangers of the planning system being brought into disrepute or of decisions being significantly delayed if calling were permitted. I would argue it is better to delay decisions to get them right. And basically that is why I'll be supporting this. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed is right, the group was slightly split, but I'll be one that'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. I think we have to understand that the system of making decisions on planning applications that we have in Pendle, it's not unique. There are other councils that do it the same way that we do, which is basically through area committees, but a lot of councils don't. A lot of councils have the system that we used to have until the area committees were set up. When was that? I don't know, 25 years ago, perhaps. Seems like ancient history now, but there was a body called the Plans Subcommittee, which I had perhaps the privilege of chairing. Planning applications throughout the borough, and it consisted of relative councillors who became experts in planning, if you like. That is a way of doing it. The argument in favour of that system is that you get people who are experts in planning. The argument against it is that it excludes ward councillors, local councillors representing a particular place from the decision making, and it encourages ward councillors just to be populist because they can go along and pretend they're against it, but they don't have to vote. The system we have puts the onus on all members of the council, and that itself has disadvantages because it makes it much more difficult for councillors to go against the views of people that they represent when the planning the planning system and our planning policies and so on really require that to happen. There is no ideal system. I am a passionate supporter of the area committee system, including doing planning. But the reason that we brought the reference originally to the Planning Management Committee, the ability to refer, was that there were some decisions being made by area committees which were, in Councillor Whip's...
1 minute, Councillor Reeves.
Thank you. In Councillor David Whip's views, perverse. Associated with this are accusations from the members of the public, and I'll be very careful what I say here, that planning decisions are being made by councillors on non-planning reasons for electoral reasons, political reasons, or whatever. And that is the difficulty we have. Therefore, and that can happen at Policy and Resources. That is to say, members of the public can make those accusations. I think we've got to be seen to be doing things properly, seen to be above board, and that is why the final the final backstop, if it like, of the call-in ought to stay, and I therefore support Councillor David Whip's amendment. I beg your pardon.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reeves. I don't see any more hands up at this point in time, so can we go to a vote on the amendment, which is to accept the report, but by striking out recommendation 2?
Chairman.
Named.
Mr. Mayor.
So I'm receiving signals that this has to be a named vote again. So we're going to vote on the amendment.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ali.
Ahmed.
Councillor Ahmed.
Sorry, I've misunderstood because I wanted to speak on some of the other items. Are we now simply voting on this particular item?
On the amendment. We'll come back.
Just on the call-in or the other items as well?
Just on the call-in.
The call-in.
And then we're going to vote on the budget and the code of conduct separately?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you very much. So, a named vote again then. I'm going to hand proceedings back over to Dean, the same system. He will read out the name. Over to you, Dean.
So, councillors, if you are for the amendment, say for. If you're against the amendment, say against. Councillor Adam.
For.
Adams. Ahmed.
Against.
Ali.
Sorry, Dean, I missed some part of the conversation. What are we voting on here again? Just remind me.
So if you are for the amendment that Councillor David Whip has made to delete the line amendment to call in the call-in procedure. So if you want to delete that line from the recommendation, then you would be for the amendment. If you don't, then you will be against the amendment.
Yeah, I'm voting against.
Councillor Amma. No, not here. Okay. Councillor Ansar.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Against.
Councillor Musawa Arshad. Councillor Musawa Arshad.
He's not present, Dean.
Oh, I was told he was, actually. Okay, moving on. Councillor Ashraf.
Against.
Councillor Aslam.
Against.
Councillor Carroll.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Clegg.
For.
Councillor Coburn Price.
For.
Councillor Cooney.
Against.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Foxley M.
For.
Councillor Foxley P.
For.
Councillor Goulthorpe.
For.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Hanif. Councillor Hanif. Councillor Hannan.
Against. Against.
Councillor Hartley.
Against.
Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Iqbal M.
Against.
Councillor Iqbal White.
Against.
Councillor Lord.
For.
Councillor McAvoy. Councillor McAvoy. Councillor McAvoy. Councillor McGowan.
Against.
Councillor Mahmood.
Against.
Councillor Mann.
For.
Councillor Mills.
For.
Councillor Newman. Councillor Nixon.
For.
Councillor Purcell.
For.
Councillor Saqib. Councillor Saqib. And Councillor Saqib.
No.
Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Tennant.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Waugh.
For.
Councillor Whip D.
For.
Councillor Whip T.
For.
And Councillor Wicks. Councillor Wicks. Councillor Wicks. That's it.
Sorry, against.
Thank you very much, councillors. And the result of that recorded vote was those in favour of accepting the amendment to delete recommendation 2 from the list of recommendations. Those for, 20, 2-0. Those against, 15. So the amendment is carried and recommendation 2 is removed from the report. We revert now back to discussion of the report, which now consists only of recommendations 1, 3 and 4. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, you wanted to come back in here, please.
I did, thank you. Firstly, going back to the area committees, my initial thoughts on this were quite clear, that I think we should have 4 area committees, but having thought long and hard about this, I feel 4 is not the answer. I think we should be going to 3 area committees for various reasons. I think, first of all, it was our group's proposal to save costs in terms of the reduction of councillors. And I think now that that's been approved and we are going to see a reduction of councillors in May, I think it's only right that we should be saving costs in terms of the reduction of in terms of costs, and by reducing the number of area committees down to 3. Secondly, I think if we have 4 area committees, the Barrowford and the parishes Pendleside seat, that area committee would be too small. I think consisting of 4 members, 4 borough councillors is too small. I also believe West Craven, yes, there are going to be 6. Again, I believe that is fairly small, but not as small as Barrowford, I accept. But I think having the 3 area committees is the way forward. Having said all that, it's not going to be our decision ultimately. It's going to be the new council after the elections, whoever is on the council at that stage. Can I also, so I'll move an amendment to that effect, reverting to 3 area committees rather than 4. I have another amendment. I accept the code of conduct changes. They are perfectly fine and acceptable. In terms of the budget proposals, I don't think our group will be supporting the proposal. The way it's happened in terms of the budget proposals being presented and the amendments made, it's always happened that way. Yes, I accept the arguments which have been put forward. It's not ideal because amendments are brought forward at a late stage, and as Councillor Iqbal put it, that's all groups have been guilty of that. But I still feel and strongly believe that whoever the groups are should be allowed to, for the democratic process, should be allowed to put forward amendments even at the meeting, and I strongly feel that. So I think we can agree on most things before the budget meeting. I accept that, and the budget working group has been set up really to facilitate that. But we're never going to agree on everything. Yes, it would be ideal if we all 3 groups sat down together and agreed on everything. It would be nice and easy, a straightforward budget meeting. But I still feel the flexibility should be there for further amendments and motions to be made at the meeting itself. So I'll move them 2 amendments, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, muted. You're muted.
It was deliberately muted, I'm afraid. Councillor Ahmed, we can only vote on those amendments one at a time.
That's fine. We can take one at a time. That's fine.
We'll take, we'll take them one at a time. But before we do that, can I ask for a 2-minute suspension, please, of the meeting?
You want
on my medical grounds, I'm afraid. So 2 minutes, and we'll come back. Give the groups an opportunity to look at those 2 amendments as proposed by Councillor Ahmed. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, we're live now, Mr. Mayor.
Back on.
Apologies, councillors. I'm just receiving a briefing on procedure in this complex issue. So, what will happen is that we will take the First Amendment of Councillor Ahmed, again on a name vote. But on this particular one, we need a seconder. Is anyone prepared to second Councillor Ahmed? First Amendment.
I'll second him. Councillor Aslam.
Can I say something, Mr. Mayor?
We need a seconder first, please, Councillor Greaves.
Oh.
Therefore, Councillor Greaves, yes.
I'm never reminded which amendment we're discussing. Which amendment are we on?
We're discussing the first one, which is the 3 area committees.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should be as aware as we can of the way in which the area committees were set up in the first place. And they were set up in order to represent the different communities of Pendle, which is why we had 5. Some people might say we should have a separate one for Airby, but that was too small. But West Craven, Norwood and its villages, Nelson as a town, Bryfield and Reedley, and then Barrowford and the Pendleside parishes and Fenston Higham fitted quite nicely. My view is we should keep to that as much as we possibly can now. The configuration of the new wards means that Briarfield almost certainly has to go in with Nelson. It can't be done in other ways because of the fact that ward boundaries now cross to now the town council boundaries, and Reedley, because of the way that is, really has to go in with Briarfield. So Briarfield and Reedley as a separate community, as it were, can't be kept any longer. Barrowford and the rural parishes can. And the idea that one assumes that if the Barrowford and Western parishes were abolished, they'd be put in with Nelson. It's the only sensible thing from a communication point of view. The idea that people in Barrowford and Carhall and roughly Newchurch and Fens and Higham and Barley and Blacko would think that they had close community ties with Nelson, I think is an ask too far. I don't think they'd be very pleased about it. And in any case, it would mean that what are very specific rural interests out in those areas, outside the centre of Barrowford itself, very specific rural interests, would inevitably always be outvoted by very urban interests from Nelson. So it seems to me that if we can keep 4, that is the sensible thing to do. As Councillor Athma said, it will be up to the new council after May, if we actually get to elections in May, which I think there's a doubt about, but if we do, then it will be up to them to make the final decision. But I think we should stand by the rural areas and not support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Gilthorpe.
Mr. Mayor, I've had my hand up since the beginning here.
Okay. Councillor Whip, Councillor Tom Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ahmed said that I had been thinking about this for a long time and believes it should be abolished for the cost. Now, I put a question to Councillor Ahmed of how much he thinks the area committee costs. I cannot imagine it would amount to a considerable sum. Maybe a few hundred, maybe £1,000 a year. And I would then ask him why he thinks that local representation is worth less than that amount for the people of the parishes. I mean, it's an infinitely more valuable thing to have, to be represented but for those people living in those areas than the few quid here and there that it costs in addition. I mean, it's just unthinkable that local democracy would be eroded to pinch pennies. It's unfathomable. Mr. Mayor, I cannot see a day when I would support this, and I hope everyone here would agree with me with that. Mr. Mayor, I will not be voting for this amendment. I'm sure we'll have some more thoughts to say on the second amendment coming here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Councillor Coburn-Price.
I would like to second Councillor Ahmed's amendment, principally because I totally listened and respected the words of Lord Greaves when he was talking about how the committees were designed in the first instance. But I think what we have done here is perhaps been too literal in our sort of rejigging. We looked at the past as opposed to the future, and potentially there is an opportunity to redesign the area committees around the new wards more sensibly, as opposed to thinking about the ones that already existed. And this is an opportunity that could be taken in May. There's no doubt about it that the area committees, each one, costs many extra thousands of pounds in terms of officer time. I'm looking in the corner of my screen at Jane Watson, who has to sit through hours of these things with her colleagues and all the council officers and all the paperwork and all the posting out and all of that. Of course, we'd still get things posted out, but there's separate paperwork for each area committee. There's no question that it is many thousands of pounds. And I fear, I wouldn't want anybody in Barrowford to be ill, or perhaps they should all go on holiday, I don't know. But there is the potential that if somebody was ill and somebody was on holiday, we'd be left with just 2 councillors. And obviously that would look very silly in terms of determining major planning applications, for example, or even significant local ones. So for that reason, I support Councillor Ahmed's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn-Price. Councillor Newman, you're with us.
But you're muted.
Am I? No, I'm not muted, am I?
Yes.
Can you hear me,
Yep.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Right, yes, I too cannot support this amendment, I'm afraid. I think our people that on these committees do a marvellous job, and it's not a vast amount of money. I've seen more money wasted than what this amounts to, and I think we should all support that. We should not support this amendment. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I listened with interest to the comments that have been made, and I recall that for
15 years, 16 years, I served on another authority where we had area committees, and a similar situation developed whereby area committees were reduced in numbers and were given far greater expanse. Very quickly, Mr. Mayor, this was found to be failing quite rapidly, that the local areas that we as councillors are engaged to represent and we are elected to represent weren't being effectively managed by having multiple areas under one area committee. When we look at Barrowford and Western parishes, as a rural community, we are completely different. We are completely alien. And I say, with respect to Nelson and to Cone, we are far more entitled to look at the realisation of what is being affected with ourselves. I would suggest, and I was one of the advocates, and I was the advocate for reducing the numbers of councillors, and I agree we did the right thing by reducing the number of the councillors. But what I must say, Mr. Mayor, we must not chop down area committees into small numbers and thereby losing the input into our individual local areas. I will oppose the amendment and suggest that we stay at 4 area committees as a minimum, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor David Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price said that we should reorganise area committees around the new ward boundaries. Well, no, the area committees should be there, organised around communities. And what you have, Barrowford, Blacko, the Pendleside villages, Fence, Higham, are a set of communities that have a commonality of community because mostly they are small villages. They do not fit in the urban area of Nelson and Briarfield, and technically that area could be forced into a shotgun marriage with the Colne District Committee, because that area shares a boundary with Colne. It could be another shotgun marriage with West Craven, because again it shares a boundary with West Craven. But any one of those 3 proposals would be flying in the face of the natural communities that there are, and can quite adequately manage themselves. Mr. Mayor, what you have is a whole series of parishes, with Barrowford the largest one, but Blacko and the rest, and an area committee based on the current footprint would continue to have those representatives from those parish councils. And so you wouldn't have a committee of 4 members. You would have a committee at least into double figures, and that would ensure that there would be sufficient checks and balances within the system. There would be sufficient checks and balances within that system to ensure appropriate propriety. Mr. Mayor, the Conservatives started this process of forcing us into having all-out elections, having fewer councillors, and at the very outset we warned that the fly in the ointment was the area committees at the fact that we need to retain those committees on natural community boundaries. And here we have the Conservatives making another enormous mistake, which would force those natural communities in with others who they have little in common. It's a nonsense. It needs to be thrown out tonight, and the Conservatives deserve every comeuppance that's coming to them for even suggesting it.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Councillor Crossley. Councillor Crossley's disappeared. Councillor Foxley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to briefly say that, my view is that we should look forwards, not backwards, which has been said. Any boundary is always going to be a compromise for series of boundaries. We're talking, there's talk tonight as if the existing system is nigh on perfect. Well, from my experience as an architect, I would describe that as somewhat optimistic an outlook. But I think we have to accept that whatever boundaries there are, it's always going to be, to some extent, somewhat arbitrary, and it's based on somebody's assessment of what their perception is as to which bits of the borough should be lumped together. I think there's clearly a lot of inertia against change, which is common. But my personal view, and I know this isn't necessarily supported by my colleagues, but I've always said it ever since I've been councillor, my personal view is that 3 may even be too many area committees. But I will happily support the amendment to 3 proposal for 3 committees because I believe that the real answer is 3 or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foxley. Councillor Turner, I can't let you back in again. Councillor Iqbal.
Mr. Mayor, I think I get to wrap up this debate on the amendment as the original mover. So if you've got any other speakers, then you can take them and I'll have the final word if that's okay. I understand.
Well, we're still talking amendments at the moment. So at this point in time, Councillor Ahmed has final say first then. Okay. Councillor Iqbal. Sorry, Councillor Ahmed.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify then? Am I speaking after Councillor Ahmed?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Iqbal, yes, you're speaking after Councillor Ahmed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Ahmed.
I thought if I've moved the amendment, I'd be the last speaker. Is that not the case?
Yeah. Clarification that I'm getting here is that you are the penultimate speaker. The mover of the original motion is the last speaker.
Okay, that's fine. I'll come in very briefly. I think all the points have been made. But Councillor Tom Whip mentioned in terms of the cost. I mean, I'm sure it costs more than a few quid as Councillor Tom Whip suggested. Surely, I mean, in terms of cost, I don't have the figures myself, but I think it's in the thousands rather than the hundreds. In terms of the
point of clarification there, Mr. Mayor, a few quid is a turn of phrase, not me actually quoting. It only costs £2.
Councillor Tom Whip, will you speak through the chair and will you keep silent and allow the opposition speakers to make their point? Thank you very much. Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, just in terms of representation, I do genuinely believe we do have parish and town councillors. I do feel the areas will be properly represented in their areas. So I don't feel reducing the number of area committees will have an impact on representing the views of the communities. The point's been made, and this is a Conservative suggestion. Actually, the Nelson Area Committee and Bradfield and Reedley also suggested that we should move to 3 area committees rather than 4. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, in the 22 years that I've served on this council, I've heard some bizarre propositions from Conservative colleagues, but I think the one tonight from the leadership of the Conservative Party ranks as one of those in the top 2 or 3 that I've heard in my 22 years on the council. But let's be clear, Mr. Mayor, if it was up to the Conservatives, there wouldn't actually be a Pendle Council. So never mind having 4 area committees, 3, 2 or 1. The Conservatives' policy nationally, and I assume is endorsed by their local leadership and councillors who have signed up to their cause, is a case that Pendle shouldn't even exist. And I will campaign against this Conservative proposal to abandon Pendle. But let me just make one thing clear. If people after the meeting get the opportunity to rewind this meeting, Councillor Ahmed never actually said which area committee was going to scrap. So he suggested that he was firmly believing against the number of 4, it should be 3. But Mr. Mayor, I wrote down exactly what he said, and at no point did he say which one he was abandoning. So whilst colleagues in Barrowford and Western parishes may feel aggrieved, it may actually be the case that the Conservatives are abandoning West Craven in the process and lumbering West Craven with corn. So we're not actually clear what the Conservative proposal is tonight, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Ahmed says that, you know, Nelson Area Committee and Bradfield Area Committee proposed 3. Well, actually, his party, the last time I checked, ran Corn Area Committee, and they proposed 4. So I think the Conservatives need to be honest tonight with the people of Pendle, Mr. Mayor, and just establish which area committee, which part of Pendle are they abandoning. He's proposed 4 to 3. I would urge his party colleagues to seriously think about what they're proposing, because who's to say that corn could be lumbered in with Nelson? Councillor Ahmed has given absolutely no detail in terms of the amendment. He's set a red herring going, and people have simply assumed that it's Barrowford and Western parishes. But the Conservatives, in my opinion, are abandoning the people of Pendle yet again, Mr. Mayor. And I think people should encourage other members of the public to actually listen to this meeting and actually see what the Conservatives are doing to them. But in terms of the governance working group where this was debated, Councillor Goldthorpe was there. At no point did he indicate that the Conservative policy was to go from 4 to 3. At no point, and the minutes reflect that, Mr. Mayor, did they say what they were going to do. And it's very easy, but it's typical of the Conservatives on this council at the moment, that we have a back of a fag packet proposal to consider things on the hoof, making policy on the hoof, Mr. Mayor. I would urge people to vote against this, and those Conservatives with a conscience, vote against this ludicrous amendment and don't abandon the people that have put you here. Stand up for what you believe in.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. We'll move straight to again the recorded vote procedure. I'll hand over to Dean. We're voting on the amendment, which is the reduction of area committees from 4 to 3. Dean.
Thank you, Chairman. So if you are for the amendment, say for. If you're against the amendment, say against. Councillor Adam.
Against.
Adams. Adams. Councillor Adams. Councillor Ahmed.
For Mr. Mayor, Marjorie Adams is struggling to unmute. I'm seeing a video. She did say something, but we could not hear.
We've moved on, Chairman. Councillor Allen.
Again.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah.
Against.
Councillor
Yes.
Allen.
Strongly against.
Councillor Ansar.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Against.
Councillor Musawa Arshad. Councillor Musawa Arshad.
Sounds like an ice cream van.
Moving on. Councillor Ashraff.
Against.
Councillor Aslam.
For.
Councillor Carroll.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Clegg.
Against.
Councillor Coburn Price.
For.
Councillor Cooney.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
Against.
Councillor Crossley.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Foxley M.
For.
Councillor Foxley P.
For.
Councillor Goldthorpe.
For.
Councillor Greaves.
Against.
Councillor Hanif.
Against.
Councillor Hartley.
Against.
Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Iqbal M.
Against.
Councillor Iqbal Y.
Against.
Councillor Lord.
Against.
Councillor McAvoy. Councillor McAvoy. Councillor McAvoy. Councillor McGowan.
For.
Councillor Mahmood.
Against.
Councillor Mann.
Against.
Councillor Mills.
Against.
Councillor Newman.
Against.
Councillor Nixon.
For.
Councillor Purcell.
Against.
Councillor Saqib.
Against.
Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Tennant.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Waugh.
For.
Councillor Whip D.
Against.
Councillor Whip T. Councillor Wicks.
Against.
Thank you, councillors. The vote on that particular amendment was 13 votes for. How many against? 25 against. So the amendment is defeated. Councillor Ahmed, I'll come back to you for your second part of the amendment, please.
Mr. Mayor, that was to do with the rules of procedure relating to the Budget Council meeting. I made my points earlier on, so I'm not going to repeat them. I think people and groups, whichever group wants to put forward a motion or an amendment, should be allowed to do so as it currently is. So I move the amendment. Thanks.
Do we have a seconder for that amendment from Councillor Ahmed?
I'll second that. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Does anyone wish to speak against this particular motion? I have Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I hate to keep referring to this, but a similar situation to this was in a previous authority where our budget was slightly different to Pendle. It was £300 million a year. And we used to go down the same ridiculous route
that is currently being exercised in Pendle. And I then, for many years, I and others advocated that we actually go down the route of, with the budget working group and with the leaders, showing consideration for each other and common sense to each other, actually deciding and agreeing on what is a reasonable budget for the authority. If something absolutely diabolical should happen on the night of the budget, yes, okay, that is a different situation. But this is not what is happening. What it is petty party politics with people just trying to chase the media coverage. It is not looking after your residents, Mr. Mayor. Your citizens demand better than this. And if they are trying to tell me that they cannot, as grown-up individuals, able to come to a conclusion between themselves and agree who's going to compromise where, and to actually bring to the budget meeting a budget that has been decided and agreed prior to this, so that the budget meeting simply spends time fine-tuning the outer avenues of it. But the budget meeting, in many ways, is almost a rubber stamp. But we let our residents know at all times as we're going along what is happening. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, petty party politics died a long while ago, and the time has come where we actually show adult, grown-up electioneering. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor David Witt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When he introduced this originally, Councillor Ahmed said it's always been the case that people produce things at the last minute. Well, no, that's not the case. I've been a member of Pendle Council for over 40 years now, and people have prepared budgets and presented budgets and given the opportunity for development of budget over a period of many months, not produce things like rabbits out of hats at the last moment. And whilst I've been the lead on finance in recent years, I have tried to build consensus across the groups, which I think has been successful. It was successful last year, and we were able to make decisions during the year which helped us achieve a balanced budget without it being very painful at all. So why is there any necessity to have a system where everybody keeps the cards to the chest and then tries to play them to best advantage at the last possible moment? I would have thought that the current Brexit brinksmanship would have taught everybody a lesson that isn't the best way to do things. And I think there's a considerable amount of merit in having that dialogue and discussion cross-party in the run-up to putting proposals forward, and that as we approach the budget meeting proper, that everybody's proposals are on the table and we can discuss them in a sane and sensible fashion, apart from trying to score party political one-upmanship, which I have to say the Conservatives have been particularly poor at. There's no need for it. So, let's have no more of this nonsense. Let's put forward proposals in a sensible way, discuss them, debate them, and then vote on them in full knowledge of what all the options are.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, these are rules of procedure. They're laws for us and how we conduct our business. And I'm concerned by some of the language that's used on the proposal that's in front of me. So we had one councillor who said, unless it was diabolical on the night. So I'm looking to the officers to say, what is diabolical on the night, to mean that we could remove ourselves from these new rules. A reasonable amendment was mentioned. what is a reasonable amendment. Councillor Iqbal's idea of what is reasonable and mine might be entirely different. There again, we might agree, but it's got to be written down. I want to see it in paper so I know what I can do and what I can't. If we're going to go away from this, we don't need a budget meeting with the councillors, because the leaders or their colleagues will sit down, they'll hatch out a budget and they'll agree it, and that'll be the end of it. We don't get to vote on it as the soldiers in all of this, because it's already been agreed. There's a lot of things here that have not been answered. I think you've left as many questions there as you have solutions. And I think if this is going to be changed, it needs to be changed properly. Lots of mention of policies on fag packets. Well, this smells of fag packets to me, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I'll take one more speaker on this one. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. I've been trying to do something about this for, I think, decades. The way in which Pendle Council behaves at full council meetings, at full council budget meetings, is pathetic, it's childish, and it ought to stop. It actually doesn't have any effect on anybody anymore, because the press don't even turn up to report them. So I don't know why people continue to do it. What Councillor Waugh has just said is absolutely untrue. The proposal that's set out here does not prevent amendments being put forward at the budget meeting. It simply says that they have to be put forward 3 days in advance, and they have to be subject to being looked at by the finance officers of the council to make sure that they are in order financially. That is a proper and sensible way to do it. In my view, we ought to go further than that. If different parties have different budgets, different opinions, they should be put to the Policy and Resources Committee. Now that we go back to a committee system, good thing, because all parties are on it, and the parties ought to be able to present their budget proposals to that meeting. Then the differences of opinion will come out there. They'll be formalised. They can then be put to the council if parties continue to want to put forward their particular proposals. That's fine. It can be put to the council, and it can be done in a sensible, orderly way. And the final point, what happens if there's an emergency or there's something crops up which hadn't been thought of or whatever? The council can simply vote to suspend standing orders and to introduce something new. But if that is going to happen, it has to have a majority of the council to do that. And by definition, it means there's consensus, at least a majority consensus round it. So I think this is sensible. It's long overdue. It could have been less draconian, but because people refuse to accept less draconian proposals in the past, it's come here now. I think this is a sensible and grown-up way to do things, and I will therefore support it.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Ahmed, this is your second amendment. For the benefit of everyone, after a fairly complicated discussion, will you please spell out in detailed form what you're going to ask us to vote on right now?
It's quite simple, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's complicated at all. I think all I'm saying is the rules stay as they are, and there's absolutely no need for these changes to occur. We've heard about various comments in terms of it's all about politics, it's all about point scoring. Well, I think the only point scoring and party politics is one way. We're going to hear it further on in the meeting as well, Mr. Chairman. So I think it's absolutely clear which way the party politics is going. This isn't about that. This is about a democratic process and groups being allowed to come up with amendments. I'm not saying I accept sometimes people will see that as party politics, but sometimes in the discussions, ideas don't come forward till a very late stage. I'm not saying necessarily on the night, but that does happen. It's happened on many occasions whilst I've been on the council. I'm not saying I totally accept the argument. It's not ideal. I accept the points made with that regard, and it can be done in a better way. But the budget process at the budget working group is good to some extent. The main ideas are brought forward, and the main issues are dealt with.
1 minute, Councillor Harper.
And usually it's just left with one or two items which groups, unfortunately, and I say that, unfortunately, cannot agree. And that will continue to happen. People will not always agree, and that doesn't make it, just because we don't agree with each other, doesn't necessarily mean that is people being or playing politics.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. We'll go straight to the vote on this again then, please.
Mr. Mayor,
I'll hand over to Dean, same rules as before. Dean?
Councillor Iqbal wanted to speak as the mover, just the final speaker.
Sorry, Councillor Iqbal, you want to come back in again on that?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I would urge colleagues to vote against the amendments. I mean, Councillor Ahmed has talked about, that there's been many ideas that have come forward at the last minute. Again, I think I can count on one hand in terms of constructive ideas that have come forward at budget meetings over the last 2 decades that I've been on the council. But 2015, we set up the budget working group in a real attempt for all parties to come together and thrash out some of the ideas in a sensible way. And, credit Councillor Goldthorpe and Councillor Ahmed that after a long gap, the Conservatives finally decided to come forward. I mean, even though he wasn't a member of the budget working group, Councillor Turner, when he was a member of the Conservative group, used to turn up and come forward with some good ideas that we used to discuss in budget working group. But Mr. Mayor, the purpose of this particular item is, as Councillor Greaves has said, takes away the politics element in terms of the meeting. I mean, if we're really here to serve the people of Pendle, again, I would urge colleagues to vote against this amendment and vote for the substantive motion on this, because this is a constructive, positive way forward for the people that have sent us here to represent them. They don't want us arguing the toss over 1 pence or 2 pence between us or one particular idea. The opportunity is there, and if the opposition councillors, led by their leadership, are too busy until budget night to actually do anything, then maybe they need to consider whether they're actually wanting to stand for council in the future, Mr. Mayor. The opportunities at budget working group, I'm more than happy to listen to what they've got to say at budget working group. Where there's positive ideas, I commit myself on behalf of the administration to take those on board. But what Councillor Ahmed hasn't proposed, he actually hasn't proposed anything really, apart from the status quo, is not a positive move forward for this council. And I would urge colleagues across the political divide to come together and vote against the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Dean, please.
So if you are for the amendment, say for. If you're against, say against. Councillor Adam. Sorry, I'll say that again because somebody coughed at that time. Councillor Adam.
Against.
Adams.
Against.
Ahmed.
For.
Ali.
Against.
Ansar.
Against.
Mohammed Arshad.
Against.
Ashraf.
Against.
Aslam.
For.
Carol.
For.
Carter.
For.
Clegg.
Against.
Coburn Price.
For.
Cooney. Councillor Cooney. Councillor Cooney. Crossley. Crossley.
Muted. For.
Fletcher.
For.
Foxley M.
For.
Foxley P.
For.
Hartley.
Against.
Iqbal M.
Against.
Iqbal Y.
Against.
Lord,
Against.
McAvoy, McAvoy, McGowan,
For.
Mahmood,
Against.
Mann,
Against.
Mills,
Against.
Newman,
Against.
Nixon, Councillor Nixon,
For.
Purcell,
For.
Sakib,
Against.
Tennant,
Against.
Turner,
Against.
War,
For.
Whip D,
Against.
Whip T,
Be against.
Wicks, Councillor Wicks,
Against.
Gentlemen, ladies, the vote on that particular amendment was those for 14, those against 23. So therefore the amendment is defeated and we move to a vote now on the substantive motion, which remains as the original report, less recommendation 2. So it's recommendations 1, 3, 4. Do you call the roll, please?
So if you are for the substantive motion, say for. If you're against, say against. Councillor Adam.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Ahmed.
Against.
Ali.
For.
Ansar.
For.
Mohammed Arshad.
For.
Ashraf.
For.
Aslam.
Against.
Carroll.
Against.
Carter.
Against.
Clegg.
For.
Coburn Price.
Against.
Cooney. Cooney. Crossley.
For.
Fletcher.
For.
Oxley M. Oxley P.
For.
Goulthorpe.
Against.
Greaves.
For.
Hanif.
For.
Hartley.
4,
Iqbal.
4,
M. Iqbal Y.
4,
Lord.
4,
McGowan.
against,
Mahmood. Mahmood. Man. Mills. Newman.
Or
Nixon.
Against.
Purcell.
against,
Saqib.
4,
Tennant.
4,
Turner.
4,
War.
Against.
Whip D.
4,
Whip T. Did you get that? Wicks.
4, 4,
It's Councillor Mrs. Shaw, Pendleborough Council.
Is now exiting.
Voting on that section of the motion was 26 votes for and 10 against. So the motion, the substantive motion is carried and the report accepted with recommendations 3 and 4.
Sweet dreams, Gary.
We then on to item 11 on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, can I move the recommendations on item 11?
can I second the proposal?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ricknell. Thank you, Councillor Whip. It's been proposed and seconded. Does anyone wish to speak against it? I don't see raised hand. In that case, can we go straight to a vote on this? Any objections? Would you shout out at me, please? No, I take it that it's a unanimous agreement that the report is accepted and the recommendation, but we do accept the draft licensing statement. Thank you very much indeed. Can we then move on to item 4 on the agenda? This is a motion. And 12A is a motion on COVID-19 to be moved by Councillor War. Councillor War.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just
Councillor Eileen Answer.
Is now exiting.
There's lots of background feedback going on at the moment, so I'll plough on and hope everybody can hear me. Pendle Council thanks all residents for all they have done to comply with...
Just a second. Okay, we've got a bit of a technical problem here, so I'm afraid yet again I'm going to have to ask councillors to bear with us, and I'm going to suspend the meeting for 5 minutes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Hallelujah.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're live now.
Good evening again, then, councillors. And I do apologise for that. We've got a few technical gremlins running around at the moment. Councillor Wall, you were kind of rudely interrupted there. I do apologise.
Not your fault, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure. Thank you for that anyway.
Councillor Wall, you're on mute, I think.
No, I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, great. I can hear you.
Most people have got their thumbs up, Mr. Mayor. So you want me to just continue?
Yes.
Okay. We'll plough on. So this is motion A, COVID-19. Pendle Council thanks all residents for all they have done to comply with the COVID-19 local rules, both in Tier 3 and during our second lockdown. Our infection rates have been slowly reducing. With the festive season approaching, advice from our scientists and doctors is clear. Reducing close contact with people from outside of your household will reduce the transmission rates. The Council resolves to request that all residents continue to abide by the government's guidance on social distancing, mixing with other households and safety guidance at the workplace. The public's continued cooperation in following this advice reduces the risks for the benefit of us all and will avoid economically damaging lockdowns in the future. That is the motion, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Is there anybody at all that disagrees with that motion?
Yes.
Do you have a seconder there, Councillor Wall?
Councillor Nadeem Ahmed was going to second if he's back with us.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to speak for a few minutes as well, please. The motions before us, Councillor Wall's just read that out. The impact of COVID-19 has been absolutely devastating for families, for businesses, and the community at large. Yes, we want to take this opportunity on behalf of all the council is to thank all the residents for all their patience, for their dedication, for all the hard work, and for following the rules as they have done. They've been absolutely fantastic throughout the pandemic, and it is difficult, and it's been really a challenging time for everyone concerned. So it's just an opportunity to thank all the residents once again for all that they've done to comply with the rules. And I think the news this week has been fantastic too in terms of the vaccination, and gives us hope and gives us the sense that this whole thing is coming to an end. And yes, we've got many tough months ahead of us because obviously this is not going to happen overnight in terms of vaccination. And even though we're going to get people vaccinated, I think we're going to have to live with this awful disease in the future. But at least with the vaccination, there is hope, and we can bring some sort of normality back to our lives and continue and begin seeing our loved ones once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Whip.
Yes, Chairman. I think that this is a very poor resolution to put before Pendle Council. We have a government that has demonstrated an abysmal lack of leadership on COVID-19, going back to the spring and before. Continues to send out mixed messages, continues to have things in a muddle, is mismanaging at every level. And here we have a motion that says, well, you know, we expect everybody to abide by the government's guidance and abide by the rules. Well, you know, we've got Dominic Cummins, you know, was part of that leadership team who drove a cart and horses through government guidance. And here we are, the Conservative group on Pendle Council saying, well, you know, do what the government tell you to do. Now, I urge people week in, week out to do the right thing. And I will never refrain from doing that. But I think there's ways and means of saying it. And I think this proposal put forward by Councillor Ward tonight is the wrong way of saying that entirely. And I regret very much that this is on the agenda paper, and I will be voting against it. I've got a motion in later on when we'll be talking about COVID-19, so I'll save further remarks till then. But no, I don't think we should be passing this. I do thank people for the forbearance in Pendle. I do thank them very much. And as we did at the last council meeting when we passed a resolution to thank people. But actually, you know, the way that this is framed, no, I'm sorry. You know, the government have made so many mistakes. It's unbelievable. And we shouldn't be blindly following what the government says.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I also won't be supporting this because reading the motion, this is akin to the Thursday night 8 o'clock collapse for the key workers. And then what the government then go and do months later, a slap in the face with no pay rise, no recognition of the hard work that those key workers have put in. I mean, people in Pendle have suffered for months and it's all good. You know, I absolutely endorse them at meeting after meeting, and at the last council meeting, if we read the minutes, you know, I thanked everybody and congratulated our staff for being soldiers during this pandemic. But the motion is really poor, and I would have expected general war from the Conservative group to actually come up with something more meaningful and more detailed. And there's nothing wrong in criticising government where they get it wrong, Councillor War. But, you know, the advice from scientists and doctors, for example, and I was listening to the Director of Public Health earlier today where he was questioning the Prime Minister's approach to the 5-day COVID holiday at the end of this month when COVID disappears miraculously. But he was quite clear that in January there will be a huge spike in cases. So, you know, absolutely applaud every single member of the Pendle community. Heart goes out to those 141 plus families that have lost loved ones. But really, this motion does not just do them any justice. It doesn't do the people of Pendle any justice. And I would urge people to vote against this, Mr. Mayor, and instead support the motion that's option C, which is far more detailed and actually sets out actions.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Tom Whip.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Can I, just before you start, Tom, can I remind people that time is going and there are quite a number of motions yet to go. Can they not beat around the bush?
The entire time through this pandemic since March. And yet the cases are still high. When I walk around Barnoldswick, I see people not flaunting the rules. They are abiding by social distancing and keeping to the restrictions laid out by the government, yet the cases remain high. I mean, I believe this is just a flaw in the approach that the government has made. I'll go into detail on this on the later COVID motion, but that is the reasoning why I believe that this resolution is not productive, and I'll be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just like some clarification from the leader and deputy leader. Are they advising, therefore, by going against this proposed motion, that residents should not abide by government's guidance on social distancing, mixing with other households and safety guidance at work? Because that is exactly what Councillor Wars motion sets out. So by voting against it, they are basically saying ignore the government's guidance, are they not? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, very quickly, I listened to all that people are saying, and I agree wholly with all parties on what they are suggesting on COVID-19. And I agree with you, we are running advance in time. May I propose an amendment, Mr. Mayor, in as much that we add to the end of the amendment that the motion A contains by adding the 4 items that are listed as resolutions in motion C to the original motion, and then both parties are in agreement, and perhaps we could then put that to the council and perhaps have agreement with the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder for Mr. Turner's amendment there, please? No. Councillor Turner, thank you for your contribution there, but it doesn't seem to have been seconded.
Thank you.
I'm going to go straight to a vote on that amendment. Sorry, I'm going straight to a vote on the notice of motion itself as written.
Mr. Mayor, do I get a chance to just round up very quickly?
If you specifically wish to come back on that one, Councillor
Just
Wall.
be very, very quick. The whole purpose of this was to thank the people of Pendle. The people of Pendle, not politics. I've left that for the other items on this agenda, and it's probably just as well that we're doing that towards the end. So I am disappointed that the Labour Party and the Liberals can't just simply thank the people of Pendle, but there we are. I would also like to thank the 600,000 people that have helped with vaccination tests, filling in forms. Many of them who live in Pendle have made it possible to develop vaccines and for us to find out a lot more of COVID. They're the unsung heroes in all of this. They have been the guinea pigs. So I thank them, and I thank the people of Pendle, and I would ask them to just be vigilant, particularly over Christmas. Please, please, please stick to the rules. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. I'm going to hand over to Dean again for a vote on this notice of motion. Back over to Dean.
So if you're for the motion, say for. If you're against, say against. Adam. Councillor Adams.
Against.
Adams.
Against.
Ahmed.
For.
Ali.
Against.
Hammer.
Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Is now exiting.
Councillor Hammer. Councillor Ansar. Councillor Ansar. Councillor Mohammed Arshad. Councillor Mohammed Arshad.
Dean is left. He's just sent me a text. He's accidentally logged himself out, so he's going to try and log in a minute.
Councillor Musawa Arshad. Councillor Musawa Arshad. Councillor Ashraf.
Against.
Councillor Aslam.
For.
Against. Councillor Carroll.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Clegg.
Against.
Coburn Price.
For.
Cooney. Cooney. Crossley. Councillor Crossley. Fletcher.
For.
Foxley M.
For.
Foxley P.
For.
Goulthorpe.
For.
Greaves.
Against.
Hanif.
Against.
Hartley.
Against.
Iqbal M.
Against.
Iqbal Y.
Against.
Lord.
Against.
McGowan.
Absolutely for.
Mahmood.
Against.
Mann.
Against.
Mills.
Against.
Newman.
Unbelievable.
Councillor Newman. Nixon.
For.
Purcell.
For.
Saqib.
Against.
Tennant.
Against.
Turner. Councillor Turner.
Sorry. For.
Councillor Waugh.
For.
Councillor Whip D.
Against.
Councillor Whip T.
Against this.
Councillor Wicks. Councillor Wicks. Is it?
Mr. Langton, Councillor Newman's back.
The vote's concluded.
4, 14, against 18.
Dear me. Right, check your head.
Mr. Mayor, you muted yourself.
There you go.
14 votes for the motion, 18 votes against, so the motion is defeated. Can we move on to 12B, Lancashire County Council Road and Pavement Repairs, to be moved by Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Nixon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that. I was muted for a second there. I've long thought the roads in Pendle to be substandard and often remain substandard for a very long time before being repaired. I do believe this poor road standard is not necessarily to do with central government, as some would rush to point out, as in my driving experience, the roads have been poor through 3 different governments, but rather it is to do with the fact that the care of Pendle's roads and pavements is controlled by people 35 miles away in Preston. I raised this very point several months ago at Conan District Committee, and it was one of the more experienced councillors, David Clegg, who was able to inform me of the possible reasons as to why the roads have deteriorated over the last 20 years or so. Seemingly, it used to be the case that Lancashire County Council provided Pendle with a pot of money every year, and the local councillors, and I would stress the word local, would do a reconnaissance mission to identify problem roads and pavements. This stopped, and although I have no proof, I firmly believe that as soon as this useful practice ceased and the care of roads and pavements returned solely to Lancashire County Council, they began to deteriorate. My hometown of Colne has many reputable tarmacking companies, all of whom will be glad of work during this difficult time and in the future. So I hope you can understand my frustration when I drive on the roads in Pendle and are exasperated at the perpetual poor quality. I appreciate that bringing control of roads, footpaths, gullies and culverts back to Pendle will undoubtedly be extremely hard work when one considers the levels of bureaucracy at Lancashire County Council, but I'd be hopeful that this fairly non-political motion will get the support of all parties of this council. And with that in mind, I'd hope any transition process would be as smooth as possible. Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Councillor Gilthorpe, please.
What's going on now?
Mr. Mayor.
You're on mute.
Councillor Gilthorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm more than happy to second this motion. I would use a word 3 or 4 times, and it's called maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. And we're fully aware of the state of our roads in Pendle in many areas across the borough. But we've also got an added issue for most of us, and particularly in parts of West Craven, and indeed on places like the M65. The more rain we get these days, the more ponding and problems we have on the roads, a lot of surface water. And it's the same old areas crop up time and time again. And it's down to maintenance. It's down to lack of resource. So I would very, very strongly support Councillor Nixon's proposal. I would hope everybody else would. There is a vested interest from my aspect, and that is West Craven and the amount of issues we have of floodwater there. It is important. I do think we can do a better job back at the ranch, and I think it's well worth the effort of trying to move this back to local control and actually get a good maintenance programme in place 52 weeks of the year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gilthorpe. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against this motion? Councillor Whip?
No, speaking in favour, Mr. Mayor. This issue was raised with the Conservative portfolio holder for highways today. I would sincerely hope that he would acquiesce with our request. This request has already gone because the issue was raised at the Policy and Resources Committee, and we've already passed a resolution to this effect. So it's a bit superfluous, but I think it should be passed, without opposition tonight, and let's get on with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Is there anybody at all who wishes not to proceed with this motion as laid out? Councillor Iqbal.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I just say that, I'm happy to support the motion as it is, but I wrote to County Councillor Keith Hidden on the 1st of December asking for a meeting with all 3 political group leaders of this council. With my other hat on as a county councillor this morning, myself, Councillor Whip and County Councillor Purcell, pushed the argument for the meeting again and actually put forward to say Pendle would be a guinea pig. We would pilot this particular scheme across on behalf of the county council. So in terms of just saying that we draft a letter to be agreed and sent, if people are happy, I'll just email County Councillor Keith Hidden and say we also want to discuss the issue around gullies and culverts to the existing letter that I've already sent. There's no point in us trying to agree a letter for the sake of agreeing it, to send another letter. If people are happy, I give that undertaking that we'll do that first thing in the morning.
Councillor Nixon, are you prepared to accept that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Councillors Whip and Iqbal for supporting it.
Thank
you
in support of this motion.
Sorry, what did you just say? I missed that.
A unanimous vote in support of the motion.
Right, yeah, crack on then. That's fine. Don't matter.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Can we then move on to 12C, the COVID-19 motion to be moved by Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I begin just by quoting from the minutes of our last full council meeting, where council thanked all the citizens of Pendle who have shown such fortitude in the face of unprecedented peacetime impacts on their daily lives through COVID-19. And I hope no Conservative councillors will suggest that we aren't thanking people in Pendle for the efforts they are making. We did so at the last meeting. The motion that we've got this evening is rather more critical of the way that this is being handled, and starts on a very sad note, because in the last 2 weeks that we've had recorded deaths, which takes us up until the end of November, 2/3 of the deaths of Pendle people involved COVID-19, and that is 40 out of 62 deaths, and that is a terrible, terrible number. And I hate to think how many more people will be at risk during the rest of this winter from our borough. And we have the government restrictions, and Councillor Iqbal alluded to this earlier on, which places us in tier 3. A lot of people are completely confused about the inconsistent requirements and restrictions that are placed upon their local lives, and the way in which some things carry on and others are outlawed, and yet the impact on the infection rate, whether that's benefiting or not, it's hard to say, because now, although it was going down, it seems to have levelled out. So what sort of measures work? Well, we outlined these at our meeting in September. Finding the disease, testing for the disease, and supporting people who need to self-isolate. And the government systems are still falling down on those counts. We don't have an effective test and trace system. We are not supporting people. There are huge numbers of people applying to Pendle Council for self-isolation support, the £500, who are being refused. You know, it's unbelievable. These are people who are desperate. They want to do the right thing, and yet the government's rules are denying them getting that support. And all this time, we have these broad brush blanket restrictions, which may or may not be having some effect, may or not be beneficial, but at the same time they're condemning people who are lonely, people who have mental health issues, to a life of solitude, and we are storing up all sorts of problems and some awful things that are happening. So yeah, we all want a way out of this epidemic, but we're just in Pendle, and I used the phrase in September, we've been locked into lockdown because of the failures of the government system and what they are doing or what they are not doing. So the resolutions are to reaffirm what we agreed in September, to reiterate to the government the need for effective test, trace, isolate and support, to request the government to provide adequate support to individuals and businesses affected by the current regime. And there's a whole story there in terms of the inadequacy of support for businesses who were forced to close, who have been so badly affected, and yet we cannot provide any effective financial support for them to continue.
1 minute.
And so,
Councillor.
and we are instructing the chief executive to write to the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Pendle's Member of Parliament, requesting implementations of these proposals without further delay. We cannot delay any further. We hope vaccinations may be a way out of the epidemic, but that is months and months and months away yet, and we've got to get through an awful winter. The government can change things for the better. They should change things for the better, as far as I'm
You're in the
concerned.
red zone,
They
Councillor.
must change things for the better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lord.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor
Yeah,
Lord.
yeah, thank you, thank you.
Is there anyone wishes to dissent? Anyone wishes to speak against the motion? Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm not speaking against, I'm speaking in favour.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Mayor, I will be supporting the motion, which is a comprehensive motion. But let me just refer back to some of the correspondence that we've had, and I, on your behalf, colleagues, have been at Lancashire leaders' meetings with ministers, meeting with the Prime Minister's right-hand man, all the way back to October. And on the 16th of October, Sir Edward Lister, top man to Boris, and no doubt good friend to many Conservative colleagues here tonight, wrote to us and said, look, basically, and I'm paraphrasing now, don't worry, government's with you, we'll sort it out, we'll work with you, and any money that needs to be provided to support test and trace, isolation, budgets, everything will be sorted. Sadly, none of that has been delivered to the people of Pendle. So subsequently, Mr. Mayor, on the 24th of November, I wrote to Boris Johnson himself and copied our Member of Parliament in to say, look, Boris, your top man promised Pendle all these things a month ago. Nothing's been delivered, and highlighted some of the key issues that were affecting people in Pendle. And to date, I've not had a response from the Prime Minister in terms of some of the real genuine issues that we raised. And they weren't political issues, they were actual factual issues on the ground, because as councillors, and I think I can speak for all councillors on this, Mr. Mayor, we have got it in the neck, and rightly so, because people have wanted to vent their frustration at the mixed messages from government over in terms of the restrictions, in terms of the businesses that have been absolutely annihilated in Pendle and are suffering to such an extent that I'm really worried that some of them will never come back to employ people in Pendle again. And that's not any fault of any Pendle council or Pendle council. The blame lies fairly and squarely at the doorstep of government. And even the top Conservative in the county, Mr. Mayor, County Councillor Jeff Driver, rightly so, has attacked and criticised the government where they've got it wrong. So what I would urge colleagues across the chamber to do to show unanimity on this issue is to support this motion, because genuinely government have got it wrong this time, and they've got it wrong in a big way, and people in Pendle have been made to suffer. Where the government have got it right, I'd be the first one to stand up and praise them. Sadly, those occasions are very few and far between. I'm alluding to a briefing that we had with the minister even early today. I'm not inspired by some of the messages coming out of government. And last week we had a briefing with, again, the top people in government, and they weren't even aware that we were still owed money going back to September and October. And it's not fair on this council to suffer, or the people of Pendle to be made to suffer for the inadequacies of government. The blame lies fairly and squarely at the door of the Prime Minister and his friends, and they need to at least have the decency to respond to some of the genuine concerns that we've raised. And I would urge colleagues across the chamber to support this motion, because factually it's bob on. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no political points. And I know sometimes we don't like our own parties being attacked. Labour were in government. I didn't like it. But where they got it wrong, we'd say they got it wrong. So tonight I would urge everybody, please, to support this motion, and let's send a unanimous decision to government.
Thank you very much, Councillor Iqbal. I'm going to go straight to a vote on this one. I know that Tom Whip, you've indicated to speak. Are you going to support the motion as well?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I am. Just one very quick point. Independents at Sage has said all along the best gold standard way of stopping an epidemic is test, trace, isolate, and support. And the government is failing to support the people who have the virus and who have been traced as contacts of people who have had the virus. And that is what this motion is for today. We need to be repeating the message that government needs to send that support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Is there any dissenting vote whatsoever on this particular motion?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, my my hand doesn't work. You know, the hand thick sign doesn't work. I'd just like to come in on this COVID virus, whatever you call it. I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody, more so in Pendle Council, but we're forgetting the people that I really feel for, and that is in the care homes. Now, luckily, I've been pressing for this, that the care homes have some sort of like a dome or something so that the relatives can go and see. Well, I've been up to Cravenside this morning to deliver some flowers to one of the residents, which we do with all of them. And what do we have? We've got they're starting now. They've made a doorway through, and the residents and the families will be able to see one another just before Christmas, which is more than welcome. But I mean, I suffered last year with a disease, but this is 10 times worse. And there's so many people out there that are not adhering to the hand washing or sanitizing, and the biggest culprits that I've come across, and that is your supermarkets. I wish you'd have gone round like I've been doing and monitoring them. I wouldn't even touch a sanitizer there. And I've approached the bosses, but the council need to go into these supermarkets because there is no distancing. They're going around touching one another. People, they're not walking into one another. But if Pendle Council could send some officers round these supermarkets, it's not the small shops, it's the supermarkets that we really need to tackle. But I praise everybody who's worked on this. You've done a fantastic job. Unfortunately, one of my consultants has gone down with COVID, and it upset me a lot, did that. But thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purcell. Can we go to a vote then, please?
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to speak, please. My hand's been up.
Yes, indeed, Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you. Councillor Whip mentioned the number of deaths in Pendle directly related to COVID-19, and that is truly shocking, the figures which Councillor Whip put forward. I think in terms of the comments made about how the government's handled the pandemic, I'm not going to sit here and try and say they've been perfect and they've been marvellous. Yes, they've done some fantastic things, and yes, they've got things wrong at the same time. But I think if you look at a lot of the other Western countries, a lot of other countries have suffered and come under severe criticism from their public. That includes even countries like Germany, Sweden, America. And we are the first country, Western country, who've started this mass vaccination. So I think credit should be due to the government for implementing that and being the first country to do so. And it is a step forward in the right direction. Can I just now come on to, in terms of the comments within the motion itself, which concern me. Firstly, the motion refers to things like sweeping restrictions and how this is affecting people's liberties and it's affecting businesses. Yes, of course they are. And nobody, including myself, likes it when our individual liberties are being restricted. But what alternative do the government have? What could they have done? I know we're saying, yes, lockdowns don't work and restrictions don't work, but every country's had to do it. When there's been an outbreak, a severe outbreak, there have been restrictions being implemented. Yes, on a local level, there's been arguments about should areas be included in restriction areas when the number of COVID cases are low. We had that debate.
Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah. We had that debate here in Pendle where people were saying, well, why should West Craven be included? And when it should be Nelson, because that's where the cases are. And so we can't have it both ways. So I'm happy in terms of number one, in terms of the resolutions. I mean, the first resolution was fine at the meeting in September. The second one, I cannot support the test and trace. I didn't support it at the last meeting, so I can't support that part of it. And number two, saying in order to contain the virus and the need for sweeping restrictions on individual liberties and restrictions on business, that they need to be, for example, I don't understand what we're doing. I think we're sending a very dangerous mixed message to the public. We're talking about the government sending mixed messages. I think this council's been sending mixed messages.
You're in the red zone.
Yeah, and the mixed messages. And number three, there has been huge support, furlough scheme, business grants. We've had council tax rebates, etc. Yes, there should be more, but there has been huge, significant investment.
I'm going to switch you off, Councillor Ahmed.
And number four is the same as the previous meeting, so I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Whip, do you have a right to respond? Do you wish to do so?
Mr. Mayor, after that last contribution, I lose the will. I'm just astonished at the attitude of the leader of the Conservative group and his defence of an inadequate government imposing useless measures on the population of Pendle, the business people of Pendle, when we could do so much more to help individuals and to help businesses, and Councillor Ahmed is refusing to do so. It beggars belief. I'll say no more. Let's get on to the vote.
Councillor Whip. We are therefore forced to go to a named vote. Over to Dean once again to go through the procedure.
So if you're for the motion, say for. If you're against, say against. Councillor Adam.
For.
Councillor Adam.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Sorry. Councillor Ahmed.
Against.
Councillor Ali.
For.
Amma. Councillor Amma. Councillor Ansar. Councillor Ansar. Councillor Ashraf.
For.
Aslam.
Against.
Carroll.
Sorry, against.
Carter. Clegg.
For.
Coburn Price.
Against.
Cooney. Cooney.
Not here.
Crossley. Councillor Crossley. Fletcher.
Against.
Foxley M.
Against.
Foxley P.
Against.
Goulthorpe.
Against.
Greaves.
For.
Hanif. Hanif.
For.
Hartley. Iqbal M.
For.
Iqbal Y.
For.
Lord. Councillor Lord,
Councillor Lord's left the meeting.
Councillor McGowan,
Against.
Councillor Mahmood,
For.
Councillor Mann,
For.
Mills,
For.
Newman,
For.
Nixon,
Against.
Purcell,
For.
Saqib,
For.
Tennant,
For.
Turner,
For.
Raw,
Against.
Whip D,
For.
Whip T,
For.
Wicks. Councillor Wicks. That's it.
Councillors, the voting on that particular vote was 19 votes for the motion, 11 votes against. So the motion is carried. The motion is carried. Councillor, moving on the agenda there, Councillor Greaves, would you
Chair,
be agreeable?
Mr. Mayor, can I, the two motions in my name, if they can be referred by the council to the Policy and Resources meeting last night. I know the agenda for that's gone out, but if they can be added to the agenda for that, then it saves us discussing them tonight, because I don't think they're terribly controversial.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greaves.
So can I move
Very welcome
that happens? Okay.
Chairman, I'm happy to second that, and as Chair of Policy, happy to take them as items next week.
Thank you, Councillor Iqbal. We take that item, therefore, D and E are deferred to Policy and Resources next week, having been accepted by the Chairman of Policy and Resources as a late item onto the agenda, which leaves us one emergency notice of motion, which I agreed to, which is labelled item 13 on the agenda, a motion on Rolls-Royce, to be moved by Councillor Whip and seconded by Councillor Iqbal. It is a very complex issue, but can I urge councillors again to be brief and not to repeat what other councillors have already enumerated? Thank you very much. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've put the motion that we submitted up on screen. Councillors may not be aware that there was a further body blow with the announcement by Rolls-Royce that not only did they intend moving the production of wide chord fan blades from Bonalswick to Singapore, but that the latest announcement is that the static structures part of the business, that's the front bearing housing, the non-moving parts of the engine that are currently produced in Bonalswick, are to be offshored to Spain. And that means that virtually the whole of the production capacity at Bonalswick will disappear down the road. They'll unbolt the machines, and all that work will go abroad. And that's jettisoning generations of skill, generations of advanced manufacturing and engineering that has been the bedrock of the local economy, not only in Bonaldswick but in Pendle and across the region as a whole. Now, the government have given Rolls-Royce billions in recent times with export guarantees and other funding, and haven't made a penny of that conditional on that continued R&D, that continued production remaining here in Britain, and I would say here in Bonaldswick. So this is such a body blow for the town that I'm still reeling from their further announcement. And what rubs salt into the wound is the strategic partnership that's been announced between the company and Infosys, which will emphasize the research and development activity in India. Can I just remind people, Bonaldswick is the birthplace of the jet engine, and here we have the company exporting yet more of those skills, those crucial strategic skills abroad. And I have to mention that Infosys is owned by the father-in-law of Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and quite frankly, this begins to stink. And so the resolution, Mr. Mayor, is that we write to the Prime Minister asking for him and relevant ministers to come protect job security and to provide for the development and production of advanced technology at Bonaldswick, to ask Pendle's MP to raise the issue in formal parliamentary debate in the House of Commons, to express sympathy to those generations of skilled workers at the Bonaldswick site since the jet engine was developed here, the current workforce, their families, and the wider community suffering so badly, and to request, at your suggestion, Mr. Mayor, that all members of the House of Lords from the North West raise this issue for consideration of their lordships. I move, Mr. Mayor. I cannot express my horror at what is happening and the appalling impact that will have upon Bonaldswick, Pendle and the North West as a whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whip. Seconder is Councillor Iqbal.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, who would have imagined that the name Rolls-Royce would treat their employees in such a manner? When I was growing up, looked up to the name of Rolls-Royce, and Rolls-Royce Bonaldswick was something that you envied to try and get an apprenticeship or get a job there. Sadly, the way that this company has dealt with its employees, and it's not just the current employees, it's the generations of employees who have made Rolls-Royce for what they are today. The way that they've been dealt with is absolutely shocking and appalling. And, you know, if it was a company who operated out of sweatshops, then, Mr. Mayor, I would be the first to say, well, you know what, we would have expected this, but certainly not from Rolls-Royce. But in terms of the Rolls-Royce situation, Mr. Mayor, the fact is that if our government want to intervene, they can do so. What the people of Bonaldswick and Rolls-Royce and Pendle, because this is not just going to affect Bonaldswick, this is going to have a catastrophic impact on jobs across this borough and across this county for that matter. But the lip service that's being paid to those employees by our Member of Parliament and our government, again, is on a par with the way Rolls-Royce are treating their employees. It's all good and well for the Member of Parliament and the government to say, well, we support what the unions are doing, we support what the employees are doing. What I would urge these people to pull their fingers out and actually come up to Bonaldswick, instead of Boris Johnson and Andrew Stevenson trying to hide behind just crocodile tears. I want them, Mr. Mayor, to come up to Pendle, meet the people that are affected, meet the unions who are fighting for them. They don't need to come and meet me, Councillor Whip, or any other politician locally. I want them to meet people who are genuinely directly affected, and let the Prime Minister and our MP look those people in the eye and say they're actually helping them. Because from the things that I've been seeing and following, Mr. Mayor, sadly, it's as though there are people far higher up the political chain than us who seem to be hell-bent on trying to potentially, and I use the word potentially, doing favours for other people. And Councillor Whip has alluded to some direct or indirect links of senior people in government, and that really causes me concern, because what those people that have worked at Rolls-Royce for generations, Mr. Mayor, want is genuine sincerity from our government. What they don't want is to be sold down the river, but at the same time for people to say, well, we feel really sorry for you, but honestly there was nothing that we could do. Well, we're leaving Europe in a few days' time. Boris Johnson sold us this, and his mate sold us this deal that Britain was a sovereign country, we'd do as we please. Well, let's put the first challenge needs to be on the 1st of January, Mr. Mayor, that our government, our MP, actually come up to Barnoldswick, meet those workers and save those jobs forever. It's not fair on the people of Pendle, Mr. Mayor, so I would second the motion.
Thank you kindly, Councillor Iqbal. There has been a written amendment submitted, so I'm going to go straight to the amendment. Councillor Goulthorpe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure everybody in the council this evening, and I know time's marching on, is 100% behind the workforce at Rolls-Royce Barnoldswick. I actually believe that, and certainly everybody is very, very extremely worried about the knock-on effect of this. Having said that, there's been a lot of comments made this evening alluding to all sorts of things, not least of which Councillor Witt comments that what has taken place recently stinks, and there is favouritism taking place or whatever. I don't know about that. Without facts and detailed facts, I wouldn't want to comment. However, I do think at the end of the day, we should pressurise, continue to put pressure on, and to actually identify our MP as not being putting sufficient pressure onto this is one of the issues that has made us put an amendment forward. So to cut to the chase, at the end of the day, we have no particular issues with the first paragraph, but from there on in, you've got the proposed amendment in front of you, that the creation of a mirror facility to the Barnoldswick site in Singapore was in fact taken in 2009. And I know Councillor Whip's fully aware of that. He knows the ins and outs of Rolls-Royce very well. And that was under our last Labour government. That legislation only allows the government to intervene in commercial decisions to offshore strategically important crown jewel technology or capabilities when it was proposed, not 10 years after the effect. The council therefore regrets that the last Labour government failed to intervene. Council welcomes the fact that this week's Pendle Member of Parliament met with Warren East, the Chief Executive of Rolls-Royce, for the 3rd time, and secured commitment from him to work very, very closely with the trade unions on alternative proposals. And I do know, and I'm sure Councillor Witt knows, that he is in constant contact with the unions at Rolls-Royce on a weekly basis. In addition, the council welcomes the unprecedented financial support on offer to Rolls-Royce from government, and again Councillor Whip has mentioned that. Notes that the firms continue to draw on the UK government's financial support packages, including billions of pounds of loans and guarantees. And we all know that those guarantees are very important to a business that's into export potential. Tax deferrals and the coronavirus job retention scheme itself. We know that the UK government is supporting the aerospace and aviation sectors with over £9 billion of grants, loans, export guarantees again. Notes with regret that Pendle Council has yet to make any offer of financial support for maintaining Rolls-Royce in Barnoldswick. It has been discussed at the area committee. Council therefore resolves to instruct the Chief Executive to write to the Chief Executive of Rolls-Royce, welcoming his decision to engage with the trade unions, and Council hope that such talks will take place in good faith and a spirit of cooperation. To bolster the alternative proposals put forward by the trade unions, the Council should prepare a generous package of financial support for the Banalswick site, including business rate relief, which would substantially reduce the cost of the Banalswick site and make it more attractive for Rolls-Royce to invest in the future. So, and finally, sorry, not finally, there's number 3 yet, to express sympathy to the generations, as Councillor has already said, of skilled workers at the Banalswick site since the jet engine was developed there, if not invented. It was certainly there at the beginning. And the current workforce, their families, and the wider community is suffering so badly as a result of the company's proposals. And we do know the knock-on effect of this along the supply chain and the ancillary businesses that are in Pendle as a whole. And I thought it might be useful that we looked at the abolition of the House of Lords. I would imagine that Lord Greaves is coming up to retirement shortly, and we could be using that as an excellent way of releasing much of needed funds. However, if you want to remove that, please do. I would like to propose this as an amendment, and it's done in good faith. I'm totally 100% behind the workforce. I believe Rolls-Royce are treating them extremely badly indeed. But we started off this all evening by talking about not being political, and well, it may be political, but we've been in a political argument for the last 2 hours of various aspects. I tend to support Councillor Greaves on his initial comment at the beginning of this evening's business. And it's a couple of areas which I've supported Lord Greaves in the past, but he described tonight's proceedings as going to be a farce. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do so propose this amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goulthorpe. Do you have a seconder for that amendment?
Yes, I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Greaves, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Carroll?
Oh.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can't add anything else to the debate on that. Mark has said it all, so we won't repeat everything again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Goulthorpe seems to be a little bit obsessed with my political career, but I can tell him I'm not going to retire anytime soon. Not least because, as Councillor Whip's motion says, we need people from the Northwest who can speak on behalf of the Northwest in the House of Lords. And as far as Lancashire is concerned, it is disgraceful that there are only 2 members of the House of Lords live in the whole of Lancashire, unless we include the Bishop of Blackburn, who's with us for a moment, for a time being. But ordinary peers, there is David Alton and there is myself. It is absolutely disgraceful. There are London boroughs with probably 10 times as many as Lancashire have. So I'm not going to give up until we get reinforcements. And we won't get them from this miserable, shabby, shoddy government. And I say that having been around for a lot of governments, this is far and away the worst government of any party and of all parties that has existed in my lifetime. It is a disgrace. It is shabby, it is shoddy, and it is sleazy. And we are lumbered with it, unfortunately, and we have to do what we can. But here we have Councillor Goldthorpe moving an amendment, which I just think seems to me to be the height of dishonest hypocrisy. I'm sorry to say that, but it seems to be that is the case. Well, what does he say? He wants to abolish the House of Lords. That's all right. Some of us tried, and the Tories, not very long ago, 10 years ago, and the Tories, less than 10 years ago, we tried to significantly reform it and make it into a democratic institution. And the Tories pulled the plug on it. And he's complaining about the amount of money it costs. It's actually one of the cheapest legislatures in the world. But never mind about that. It actually, in 2018-19, it cost £117 million. Well, when we're talking about billions of pounds to support high-tech industries and their exports and so on, that's not going to go very far. It's cost more this year because the Tories have filled it up with a load of place seekers, lobby fodder, and goodness knows what they're to be taught, what they're to be called, mates of the Prime Minister, friends of friends, and all the rest of it. And in they come, and it still doesn't make any difference. The House of Lords has the sense to criticise and to hold the government to account in a way in which the House of Commons doesn't do. Well, we'll ignore that last paragraph of the of Councillor Goulthorpe's amendment, which is just infantile buffoonery, really. But what he says, he's not going to be political, but he spends his time attacking the last Labour government more than 10 years ago. Well, okay, we will take him at his word. And then it notes regret that Pendle Council has not yet made any offer of financial support. How many £1 billion does Pendle Council have, for goodness sake? Pendle has a good record of developing and promoting local industry and local jobs, but it's not going to be able to step in and sort out the financial problems roles say they have of maintaining production and research and development in Pendle. That has to be national government, and try and turn it onto Pendle Council and blame Pendle Council is more infantile buffoonery, quite frankly, and it doesn't help any of us that local politicians are behaving in this quite... Well, okay, there we are. I will support Whip's motion. I don't doubt that the Member of Parliament for Pendle is doing and is meeting people and the rest. But the Member of Parliament for Pendle spends a lot of time doing this. What does he ever achieve? What has he ever achieved? That's the problem. He is a quite...
You're in the red zone, Councillor Greaves. And your microphone is muted. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, can we hear
Turner.
what Councillor Greaves had to say about MP?
Thank you.
Councillor Turner, are you going to speak on the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Just one very quick item. At the start, Councillor Goulthorpe did indicate he was happy to withdraw agenda item, the amendment item 4, and I'm pleased for that. And Willie actually confirms this meeting that he has now withdrawn the amendment item 4, and that we take reference to the House of Lords out of the amendment that he has now declared. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Councillor Tom Whip, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Goulthorpe said how this council should offer a support package. Mr. Mayor, I fail to see what this council can offer that the government has not already. Billions upon billions of pounds have been ploughed into Rolls-Royce. Councillor Whip, in moving his motion, referred to the over 2 billion this year. Mr. Mayor, the only thing that I could see that we as a council could do was waive the business rates, which don't amount to much, if anything. I mean, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what they've already received from our government from the taxpayers' purse. Mr. Mayor, I can't support this amendment. I think it's too flawed. I think the reasoning of not thanking Andrew Stevenson is flawed in itself. Nowhere in this motion do we say Mr. Stevenson is doing a bad job. We just call for him to continue lobbying and to make his representations in the House of Parliament, which is his right as MP for Pendle.
Thank you, Councillor Whip. Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, regarding the amendment, I have to say I cannot support the amendment. Tom basically has mentioned something that I was going to say regarding where this money is going to come from. Is it going to come from thin air? You know, where's this money going to come from? As a local councillor in Barnoldswick, I'm really feeling for the workers and the families of Rolls-Royce and the wider community, the devastating effects that is going to have with the town centre businesses and such like. I think it's just terrible, and we need to put on as much pressure as we can to try and get something sorted for these poor people of Barnoldswick. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Goulthorpe, unless you have anything to add, I'm going to go to a vote on the amendment.
Only Mr. Mayor, to confirm that I'm more than happy to delete item 4 and support Councillor Greaves in his future development.
Thank you, Councillor Goulthorpe. So can we go to a vote, please, on the amendment, which now is, in fact, just resolves or resolutions 1, 2 and 3 on there. Dean, can we go back to a vote again, please?
Yes, Chairman. Before the amendment as amended, say you're for. If you're against, say against. Councillor Adam.
Against.
Adams.
Again.
Ahmed.
For.
Ali.
Against.
Ansar. Councillor Ansar. Ashraf.
Against.
Aslam.
For.
Carol.
For.
Carter.
For.
Clegg.
Against.
Coburn Price.
For.
Crossley. Councillor Crossley. Fletcher.
For.
Foxley M.
For.
Foxley P.
For.
Goulthorpe.
For.
Greaves.
Against.
Hanif.
Against.
Hartley.
Against.
Iqbal M.
Against.
Iqbal Y.
Against.
Lord. She's gone, McGowan. McGowan. Mahmood.
Against.
Mann.
Against.
Mills.
Against.
Newman. Newman. Nixon.
For.
Purcell. Purcell. Saqib. Saqib. Tennant.
Against.
Turner.
For.
War.
For.
Whip D.
Against.
Whip T.
Against.
Wicks. Councillor Wicks.
Mr. Mayor,
Sorry,
you're muted.
the voting on the amendment was 11 votes in support of the amendment, 15 votes against. So the amendment is lost, and we're reverting to the substantive motion as presented. And we're going to go straight to a vote on that particular substantive motion. Thank you very much, councillors. Back over to Dean again.
Councillors, for the final time, if you are for the motion, say for. If you're against, say against. Councillor Adam.
For.
Adams.
For.
Ahmed.
For.
Ali.
For.
Ashraf.
For.
Aslam.
For.
Carol.
For.
Carter.
For.
Clegg.
For.
Coburn Price.
Abstain.
Fletcher.
For.
Foxley M.
Abstain.
Foxley P.
Abstain.
Goulthorpe.
For.
Greaves.
For.
Hanif.
For.
Hartley.
For.
Iqbal M.
For.
Iqbal Y.
For.
McGowan. Mahmood.
For.
You can dish up.
Mann.
For.
Mills.
For.
Newman. Newman. Nixon.
For.
Purcell. Sakib.
For.
Tennant.
For.
Turner.
For.
War.
Abstain.
Whip D.
For.
Whip T.
For.
Wicks. I think she's gone, hasn't she?
For, none against.
Thank you, councillors. The voting on the substantive emergency motion then was 25 votes for, no votes against. And I'd like to thank you all for your perseverance in staying with us this evening. I do make a personal apology for having to suspend the meeting. And I do apologise for one or two little technical glitches that we ran into during the meeting as well. Totally unforeseen. But thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you for coming along this evening. Thank you to the public who may be still out there listening to us. Thank you to the officers and staff who have stuck with us fairly late finish by today's standards. However, I'd like to take this opportunity, since we can't meet in person and it is the last meeting for 2020, to thank you for all your efforts. As councillors, thank you for your volunteer efforts in COVID and for whatever else you do in terms of work, and I'd like to wish you all a very safe and peaceful Christmas. Thank you very much indeed. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.